What's up, everybody? Good afternoon. We've got more left tackles to take a look at here. Probably we're not quite in the right territory for the Seahawks to start thinking about stuff. Although, I will say that there is some consideration for utility value. Some of these guys that we're talking about as left tackles can also play other positions on the offensive line. And we've reached a point where maybe it's practical that you have a guy that you wouldn't just sign as a backup left tackle to Cross, but maybe you would sign them as a utility backup to Cross and Lucas, and maybe even add some interior offensive line value. So we should be open to this stuff. We should be open to this stuff. These are guys I would qualify as mid-level starters, although I will say there is a significant discrepancy between the first guy in this video and the last guy in this video. I admit that. It's just the way the grouping worked. There weren't a lot of high-quality left tackles in free agency this year. I mean, there never really are, right? When you think about it, like a quality left tackle rarely gets to free agency. So I just grouped them together in the way that made sense the best. So let's take a look at some starter quality, but not quite, upper level starting quality left tackles. First guy is going to be, Dan Moore. Dan Moore, coming into his prime, going to turn 27 in late September. I've been a Steeler his whole career. He's been consistently present, right? We can at least say that, right? He's missed 2 games in his career. He's started every game he's played. And that Steelers offensive line, it hasn't been great, but it hasn't been terrible with the exception of maybe 2 years ago. So I do think there's some credibility here as a starting caliber left tackle. PFF liked what he did last year on over 1,100 snaps, 67.2. Pretty strong grade, pretty strong score. Good, well-rounded player, decent in both areas. Now, some people are going to look at this and they're going to have alarms going off in their head, 12 sacks allowed. But remember the quarterbacks he was dealing with last year, Russell Wilson and Justin Fields. 2 quarterbacks that have abysmal pocket presence and take way too many sacks. So the difficulty level was cranked all the way up for Dan Moore last year. Both quarterbacks he was protecting do not have a good grasp of how to evade pressure and evade sacks and function within a structured offense. So, of course, that number is going to be high. It was always going to be high. I don't think that's reflective of Dan Moore's ability to pass protect. Now, the year before that, 51.8, so he was one of the worst graded tackles. His pass blocking in particular got dinged heavily, ironically in a year where he wasn't protecting Russell Wilson and Justin Fields. Not that Kenny Pickett and Mason Rudolph are really all that much better. Not that you're going to have an easier time protecting those guys. But what you're getting with Dan Moore, the point I'm trying to get at here is that there's some inconsistency here, right? You're not going to get somebody you know is going to be great, or you don't even necessarily know he's going to be good, but you're going to get somebody that if you put them in the right situation and you build around them properly, you should get a quality player out of, somebody that you can start and feel okay about. So Dan Moore, up and down, at least he's out there for you, right? He's there when you need him. You just don't necessarily know how good he's going to play from game to game, from season to season. And for that, Dan Moore is supposedly going to get 3 years, $37.7 million. That's $12.6 million a year. That's not that much less than some of the guys we were talking about earlier today. That's slightly less than Cam Robinson, but it's in the same ballpark, admittedly. So I don't know if the downgrade from from Cam Robinson to Dan Moore is 1.4 million a year. So I think this is going to be a little bit less. I don't think Dan Moore is going to get 12.6. I think it's going to be closer to 10. I could see the 3 years because of his youth and the fact that he's coming into his prime. I don't know if I see 12.6. I just don't. We'll see. He is relatively durable. That's going to help him. I don't see 12.6 a year. Okay. Next guy we should consider, a longtime NFL vet. This guy's been cooking for many, many years. Tyron Smith, or Tyron Smith. Most recently, the New York Jets just turned 34 in December. This guy has been an absolute stalwart of the position for a very long time. He was the Cowboys starting left tackle, made 8 Pro Bowls in 9 seasons, made All-Pro a few times, including 2 All-Pro second teams. So he's had a great career. He may go to the Hall of Fame. He may be remembered as one of the best left tackles of his era to never play in a Super Bowl. Last year, the age finally caught up to him to the point where the Cowboys parted ways. He went to the Jets, played fairly well. You do have to worry about the cliff with him. And the thing with Tyron Smith is that it seems like pretty much every year he misses at least a handful of games over and over again. Ever since 2016, which was the first Dak Prescott year, he's been a guy who you can count on not playing in every game. You get really good play out of him for the games he does play, but this was one of the reasons why, when he was on the Cowboys, the contract extension he took was monstrous. It was a really long-term deal, which most players don't want to do. I think it was like a 10-year deal or close to it, and most players would never do that, but he wanted long-term stability over the ability to re-up himself every few years, because it allowed him to take games off without worrying about having the rug pulled out from underneath him when he was on the Cowboys. So there was some gamesmanship there. So like from 2016 to 2019, he played 13 games a year. And it's very unlikely that he was actually just legitimately injured equivalently all of those years. What probably happened with Tyron Smith was he would take some weeks off and just say, I don't feel right, because he just wanted the ability to kind of relax during certain points of the season and pace himself, knowing that he wasn't in any real danger of being released for it or being reprimanded for it, because the contract he was on was so long. That's a little bit of a inside baseball theory some people have on why he took that deal. Last year, he played 10 games for the Jets. So any team that gets Tyron Smith needs to be ready for him to not play the whole season and probably miss a good chunk of it. Old age is only going to make him miss more time. Now, PFF did think he was really good last year. 73.7, 30th of 141 tackles. So he was a good, effective player when he was out there. Played left tackle the whole year. Year before that, he was really good. He was top 5 in PFF grading in 2023 on over 800 snaps. 840 snaps, actually, if you count everything he played. He was lined up at tight end a little bit. So you're still getting a player that can play for now, but the cliff is probably coming with Tyron. So be aware, be advised. And Spotrac, I don't know if this is going to happen, but they think he's getting 1 year, 7.5. Now, the contract he got with the Jets was, I think, 1 year, 6.5. I don't know if he's going to get more. I could see him maybe getting a couple teams to bid up each other, but why would you give him more money after a season where he played 10 games, wasn't a killer anymore, and is only a year older now? He's going to turn 35 late in the season next year. So I think it's more like 1 year, 6 million. But it's possible that there's a bidding war, and then this can happen. Last guy in this video, and this guy is of clearly a different grade than the previous two, admittedly, Kelvin Beachum. Kelvin Beachum, longtime NFL veteran, but he keeps on cranking out years where he's a pretty capable starter. He was a 7th-round pick of the Steelers back in 2012, and he just keeps sticking around. He's about to turn 36. Most recently, he was on the Cardinals, and with the exception of 2023 when he was a backup, year after year, he's out there cranking out decent starting seasons at different positions for various teams. He was a Steeler for 4 years, went to Jacksonville for 1 year, went to the Jets for 3 years, Arizona the last 5 years, and he's mostly been a starter. Last year, he started 12 games after it looked like his time as a starter in this league was over, and it might be over now, but I don't know. I think that with the way tackles are in this league right now, you could see Beachum get another starting job. In fact, I think that he will. PFF thought he was decent last year, about average, 64.1, workable, top 60 of 141 tackles, barely. Mostly at right tackle, I will acknowledge that, but that might not be a bad thing if you're a Seahawks fan considering this. The year before that, the little bit that he played was pretty much all at left tackle, 61.2, so about average. So it's not great, but I do think that it is approximately worthy of being a starter at tackle in this league. And when you add in his utility value as a right tackle that is definitive because he's done it recently, I think there's some value here. Botrax says 1 year, 4.1 million. Seems about appropriate. Seems about okay. So I think that's probably about where you're going to land. It would not shock me if it creeped up a little bit to like 1 year, 5 million, because he did have a pretty decent year in 2024. So Beachum getting up there. I don't know if I would be the team that rolls the dice as a starter, but if you could get this guy as like a high level utility backup, I think you got something. So those would be that group. Left tackles that are of a decent quality but have significant concerns, be it age or overall consistency. So let me know what you think of them. I don't know if the Seahawks are going to be biting here, but should at least consider it. All right, go Hawks. See y'all later today. More videos coming, more left tackle stuff. And yeah, go Hawks.